Simon's got a nice talk this afternoon, obviously a very topical talk on the effect of, or the impact of rather, COVID on the golf industry. So I'll hand over to Simon. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. Nice to see 40 odd of my favourite people joining this call. I have with me my trusty timer set for 10 minutes. So it's going now, and I realise it's my own time that I'm wasting, so I'll get on with it. If you hear that, I've failed if it goes off. This is a piece of work that we did over the summer for the Royal and Ancient. The Royal and Ancient is the world governing body for golf, apart from the USA and Mexico, and they've been our client since 2010. I've got to stop using this picture, but in 2016, we did a piece of work for the R&A called a satellite account for golf, and we launched it at Westminster. And it was great timing because it was the first time that a national governing body of sport had produced an economic value of a sport's worth, and it coincided with Sporting Future, in which is the government strategy for sport, which challenged organisations to demonstrate the economic value of their offer. So this is the baseline. What is the golf industry worth? Well, in 2016, the best figures we had were from 2014. And consumers, customers, participants spent 4.3 billion on golf. The contribution of golf to what is in effect gross domestic product, but we have to call it gross value added because it doesn't take into account taxes and subsidies. But to all intents and purposes, it's the value of golf to the economy, was 2 billion, and employment was just over 54,000 full-time equivalent posts. Now, what's interesting about this is that although Sport England recognises well over 100 sports, consumer spending in golf was 13.9% of all sport, 6.8% of gross value added, and 7.7% of employment. So one sport, quite a sizable contribution to the entire sport economy. In 2018, there was a European sports satellite account project which identified that golf had a pretty unique economic advantage over other European nations because the golf industry is much bigger here than it is elsewhere. So the first thing that we did with this piece of work in the summer was to recalibrate the satellite account for golf. In the 4 years, the sport industry had increased. Golf hadn't increased at the same rate, but we needed an up-to-date baseline. So the first thing we did was calculated the value of golf in 2019, i.e. pre-COVID. It's gone up a bit, but the sport industry itself had gone up even more. So those percentages that I described earlier, consumer spending was down to 9.3, GVA down to 4.5, and employment 5.9% of the entire sport industry. And that was driven on the one hand by a fall in golf participation and a growth in the sport industry.
Good, to help your throat.
Growth in the golf industry as a result of increased gambling and broadcast revenues. So this is what happened during lockdown. The 6 weeks, 23rd of March to 3rd of May. Consumer spending in golf reduced by 85%. Golf's contribution to the economy, GVA, reduced by 68%, and employment reduced by 60%. So quite a sizable hit to the golf economy. In addition to this work that we were doing, we also did a survey of golf clubs, and we had about 650 responses, and that enabled us to get a good feel for what was happening on the ground. It was also a very good time to be surveying because people weren't doing anything else, and response rates to online surveys during that period were particularly high. So what you can see here from the 650 odd golf courses that responded, 98% of them reported trading losses, 92% of them furloughed staff under the coronavirus job protection scheme, and they furloughed nearly 80% of their staff. Fortunately, at that time, only about 5% made redundancies, but 35% reported accessing or problems accessing government support, probably the most significant of which was the retail, leisure and hospitality grants for businesses that had a rateable value of less than 51,000. Many golf clubs were just above the threshold and got nothing. And that was the subject of a subsequent piece of work that we did, finished about 2 weeks ago. So when you look at the trading losses, this is the distribution of them. The average across those 6 weeks of lockdown, the mean was 90. So you can see it's sort of slightly biased towards the larger clubs because the median was 60,000. But nonetheless, on average, they were reporting about an 18% loss in annual income. And these are some of the lived experiences of the golf club managers. Here's one: we've lost all our bar and restaurant income, all visitor green fees, all accommodation income and shop retail income. Total income lost is over 74,000. And what this shows us is that golf is a complex business. Golf is retail, so the selling of equipment, clothing. It's hospitality, bars, catering, accommodation, and it's also participation in golf, green fees and club memberships. And one at the end here, reduction in business from the end of September to the end of March was approximately 65,000. It was a pretty dreadful winter. Spring was looking quite good. Clubs were looking to recover some money, and then we had shutdown or lockdown, and in this case, income has been zero. So here's a summary of the annualized declines. We reckoned consumer spending would go down in golf by 39%, GVA would be down by 34%, and employment by 22%. And then what we did was put it into context. The Office for Budget Responsibility said that in the second quarter, the economy would contract by 35%. The Bank of England said 30%. And in golf, our estimate was 60%. And when you annualize that, the decline in GDP for this year, the OBR say 12.8%, the Bank of England 14%, and golf 34%. So a big hit because it is so dependent upon retail, hospitality, and participation. Now this was interesting. This is what helped to get golf back. The English Premier League said it was going to lose about $1 billion. The EFL, the English Football League, said about 200 million to September. Cricket, 380 million, and the RFU, 100 million. Now, our estimate for the golf industry was just over 2 billion, so more than those four bodies above put together. Very telling statistic, which would prove to be a great help. Golf not only has economic impact, it also has a social impact. So work that Larissa has done for England Golf shows that golf delivers 1.8 billion in social impact, of which 1.4 billion is mental well-being effects and 0.4 billion physical well-being. So by people not being able to play golf, the loss of mental well-being benefits was £27 million a week. Another compelling statistic that encouraged people to take action. So the policy impact, or so what? Well, the good news was we were able to feed this to the R&A on an ongoing basis, and golf was a prime mover in safe return to play on the 13th of May 2020, along with basketball and tennis, I think, and one other sport. Non-essential retail, so pro shops could open from the 15th of June. The hospitality industry reopened on the 4th of July. And since then, golf is making a significant participation and economic recovery. People who previously played cricket, for example, and can't do now, and racket sports are moving to golf. You can't get a tee time in many golf clubs now. And we're also helping golf to maintain its status as a good corporate citizen. And if you listen carefully, that's me done.
Great stuff. Bang on time, as always. Thank you, Simon. Do you have any questions for Simon off that interesting talk there on the impact of COVID on golf? Okay, sorry, there's quite a few people to check through. It seems it's very kind of sensitive, as you say, sensitive industry to lots of different factors there, Simon. The fact that you've got all these different aspects of golf, the retail, the service industry, as well as actually participating in golf as well. And it's actually interesting to see actually that people are actually moving between different sports, from cricket to golf, for example. I mean, did you? I'm presuming you saw, the similar, obviously the corresponding decline in participation in cricket, for example. Obviously, they've not been able to resume cricket at this point in time. Have you been able to look at any of the impact in cricket as well? I'm presuming you're seeing, well, probably not similar impacts because of the complexity of golf, but again, a decline in participation in cricket.
Well, cricket didn't come to the party with the prime movers, and we had professional cricket, which they prioritised through the bio bubbles at the Ageas in Hampshire and Old Trafford in Lancashire. That seemed to be the priority with that game, and they seemed to stop recreational cricket. And when you think about it, on a golf course, the average golf course is somewhere between 40 and 60 hectares. And at any point in time, the golf course will have a capacity of around about 74 people. So you can actually hide a lot of people on a golf course. And the likelihood of them spreading coronavirus to each other, particularly with it being outdoors, is relatively low. And they'd had schemes like you arrive at the club, you get changed out of your car, you go straight on the green. But for cricket, more often than not, everybody piles into the pavilion. So you've got 11 people unable to social distance inside. And although cricket pitches are quite big, they're not as big as golf courses. And also you have this bizarre practice of throwing the ball around and putting saliva on it. And so it's much more difficult to control. Nobody licks golf balls, to the best of my knowledge. And so it was an easier sport to bring back than cricket. And it just happens that there's an awful lot of overlap between hand-eye coordination sports. So particularly between cricket and golf, but also tennis, and to a lesser extent, racquetball, squash, table tennis. There was also a considerable overlap, because if you've got good hand-eye coordination, you can pretty much apply it to anything. Golf is probably 2.5, 3 times the participation rate of cricket, and it's played for a lot less. So economically, it's probably much less significant than the golf industry.
Thanks so much. I can see Tim wanting to join in.
It's a statement rather than a question, but I was talking to the head pro of a local golf club this morning, who's actually said that COVID has saved a number of golf clubs in Sheffield. So I suppose that reiterates part of what Simon's just been saying. They were struggling before this, and it's almost helped them out.
Yeah, I'm not a golfer, as people know. I do a lot of work in golf, but I probably couldn't hit a golf ball off the ground, not for want of trying, I'm just rubbish. But something I have been doing quite a bit of during lockdown is walking, and one of the walks has been around the Hallamshire golf course. And since it opened in May, I've taken a particular interest. And I can tell you at pretty much any time of day, particularly on a weekend, not only can you not get a tee, you can't even get a car parking space. So they're doing all right. In another conversation around the other piece of work we're doing on rateable values, we had a conversation with the guy from the Belfry, which is actually Europe's most successful golf resort. And he was saying they are absolutely snided until the end of November with bookings.
There you go. Great stuff. It's really interesting. It's really interesting to see that movement between different sports and how it's affecting participation. Do we have any final questions? Okay, great stuff. Thank you very much, Simon. Very interesting talk. So thank you.
Can I just say one thing, Marcus?
Yeah.
Which is, I'm a mouthpiece for this research, but there are people on this call like Lee who worked feverishly for this, and also Richard Coleman, who's not particularly well at the moment. So it was a team effort and not the Simon Shibli show.
Great stuff. Yeah, thanks to all involved in that piece of work. It's very interesting to see the results from that. So thank you.